Hello world, I hope you're enjoying the conference. Welcome to this session. So this is the session with the longest title ever. Better, faster, the perfect financial report in Power BI means the perfect data model. Honestly, I think this is one of my favorite sessions to give because it kind of emphasizes why everyone's talking about a star schema, right? But not through, some endless array of, telling you what is a star schema, but through showing you if you create a model like that, what you get, right? And it's sort of derived from a totally different place. So what we're going to show is we're going to be working in Power BI, and what we're going to show is how you can create a model, right, that does 7 times more than the regular model, right? Where you can do same thing with one report that you could otherwise do with 9 reports, right? How a single measure can be just a substitute for 7 different measures, right? That's what we're going to do. That's what this session is all about. And then in the end, I'll tell you why, everyone is not doing this. Well, some because they don't even know it exists, which hopefully from today onwards will not be you. But then again, sometimes this is just not possible, and we're gonna explain why. But before we get into it, my name is Gašper Kamenšek. I'm an Excel MVP from Slovenia, and for those that don't know that, Slovenia is the only country in the world that has the word love in the name, right? And I'm an Excel MVP. I have been so since, well, way back 2016, I think. And I regularly speak at conferences all over the world, giving sessions just like this one. You'll all assign to my newsletter, you're all watching my YouTube, and from here on out, you'll only see 2 more slides, and that will be a Q&A slide and a big thank you slide. So from here on out, it's all about demo. So here's what we're working with. Let me first show you the data set. The data set is probably as straightforward as it gets. We have our actual data. It's all about sales here, right? Financial sales. So it's all about data, about sales. This is the actual sales. And then we have another fact table, which is our planned sales, right? So we have the forecast and we have our actuals, and we'll sort of want to, compare the two, right? And then we have some dimension tables. We have a product, we have geography, we have business unit, we have salesperson. For those of you that don't know this, so in data modeling, you have fact tables and you have dimension tables. And the idea is fact tables are those that keep getting new data every day, right? They keep getting longer and longer, and they're usually pretty long. So what you want to do is you want to make them as narrow as you can, which means as few columns as you can possibly, have. And by doing that, what you basically do is you go away from the Excel approach where it's all in a single table, right? So if you was talking about products, you would not only have a product ID in here, but you would also have product name, product category, product group. So you would have all that data within that fact table, but not in data modeling. In data modeling, product is represented here by a single number, and that is the ID. And usually it will be a number, because it turns out in modeling, a column takes up as much space as it has unique values. And if you have the same amount of unique values as text or as numbers, the numbers take up less space. That's why usually you'll always see it as numbers, right? And then over here I have the dimension table, which says this number actually represents this product, this category, this group. But over here, each product is only listed once, which means I'm not repeating data, right? Because if you think about it, over here, if I'm selling the same product 2 times, right, I would need to also repeat all that category, group, the name of the product 3 times, right? Well, not in data modeling. That's the idea. You only got the ID, but then over here, you have the data about that product, but only once, right? So this is our data, and here's how we're going to start. We're going to start by a blank Power BI desktop, where we're going to say, get data from Excel. We're going to take, well, not that. Let's just take this one. It will do just fine. It's the same file that I just opened, and that was the evidence of it. So let's take this file, and basically I'm going to grab all of those. Right, I'm going to grab all of those tables, and I will say transform, but only for a single reason. There's this table that's called products 1, right? So I'm just going to say transform, basically to rename that, right? So I'm going to get in here, I'm going to go products 1 should actually be called products. So I do that here. And from here on out, I'll just say close and apply, right? So now in my Power BI, all of a sudden, I have all these tables. And now what we need to do, once we have the tables in here, and I'll just wait for them to load, right? Now you need to tell Power BI how those are connected, right? And because I had the auto connect on, it already did all that for me. I'm just gonna kind of create this basic layout where I'll have my dimension tables on top and I'll have my fact tables at the bottom, right? So you can see these are all on the many side of the relationship. These are all on the one side of the relationship. So these are my dimension tables and these are my fact tables. But there's a dimension table missing here. So let me add that, and I'll add it in the simplest way possible. So I'll just grab this code. I'll go modeling, new table, and this table should be called a calendar, and there's the code for it. So I create that, and now I just need to connect it to my tables. So there's a date here, there's a date here, and there's a date here, and a date here. All right, so now I have my calendar table connected, and the only 2 things that I still need to do with my calendar table is I need to sort the month column by the month number column, and I'll also sort the weekday column by the weekday number column. Okay, once I've done that, and we'll have to repeat that for the perfect model, now let me show you why so quickly in Power BI, if you're doing these regular models, right? Why it's so easy and why it's so quickly that you run into having this endless array of reports, right? And it's kind of simple. If I look at my actual, right, I can see that I have 3 KPIs here. I have revenue, I have cost, and I have gross profit, right? So basically, first I'll focus on one of those, right? And let's say that will be revenue. And that would look something like this, right? So I'm going to say I want to create something by month, right? So I'll have it by month. And now I want to calculate the sum of revenue. So I'm going to go into actual, right click, new measure. And I'm going to say total revenue equals sum of, shockingly, let me just do it like this, actual revenue, right? So this is my formula. Total revenue equals sum of actual revenue. And I'll just put it in here so we can see how it works. And let me add one more thing to this so it will make more sense. Let me put the year up here, have it as a slicer, and have a single year selected. All right, so this is now my total revenue for 2017. I'm gonna put that in a chart like this. Of course, we're getting to the perfect part, right? This is just the way most Power BI reports are done, right? So here I have my revenue. I could also have like a card that shows me what the total revenue is, right? And then over here, I would probably have some sort of split. Let's do it by business unit. So by business unit, and let's have it like this, show me total revenue, right? Something like that. So now I have something that is functioning, you know, it does something. But so far, all I've done is I've got my revenue calculated, right? So if you think about it, so far, I've only done 1 out of 3 KPIs, right? So already I've got 1 report, I should have had 3. So for each KPI. But then I would also figure out if I go here to plan and I say, you know what, I also want to create a measure in the plan table that would kind of be the same. It would be total revenue plan, and that would be a sum of, sorry, let me remove that, plan revenue, right? So now I have that one, and I can put it in here, right? I can say, you know what, just compare the two. And I can even put it in here, right? I want to see how that compares to my plan. Okay, that is something. But now if I look at this, I'm going to go, well, yeah, okay. I mean, it is something, but on a yearly basis, are we above it or are we below it? Well, I don't really know because it's all monthly, right? I know for each month if I'm above or below, but I don't know altogether. So let me create a year to date, right? Let me just duplicate this. And instead of this being monthly, so I'll remove this and this, and I'll add a new measure, which is going to be calculating this year to date, right? So I'm going to go total revenue, YTD, and that equals calculate. It's always calculate, right? That's when you have a filter expression. So calculate what? Well, I still want you to calculate total revenue. That hasn't changed, but now I want you to take your dates as if they're year to date, right? So dates YTD, and my dates are in my calendar table, and column is called date. There you go, like this. And I can now add this measure, right? And this looks kind of different. And now I need to do the same thing for the plan, right? New measure. So I'll go total revenue PLYTD, right? So this one is a long name, equals, well, it's again calculated, needs to be. I want you to take total revenue plan this time, and again, take that into year to date. So it's calendar date. There it is. Now let me add that. So it's this one, right? Oh, now I can tell, oh, we're below plan, right? What about 2018? Okay, we were above, right? So I already got 2 reports. I already got 4 measures, and I'm still only dealing with revenue, right? And then I still haven't done one that probably is important, which would be previous year. So if I go new measure, right, and I now say, okay, now I want you to calculate, and all this time intelligence is only available to me because I have a calendar table. I have the time dimension table, right? So I'll do total revenue PY as in previous year. And this will be again a calculate. I'm again building on my total revenue measure, but this time I'm saying date at. My date is in my calendar. I want you to go -1 and I want you to go -1 by year. Right, that is my basic total revenue previous year. And I can go to my first report and I can add it here, right? Let me just make this wider a bit so I'll see the names. There it is, right? And I can add it. I can see that, okay, I wasn't exactly on par with plan, but, you know, versus previous year, I'm almost certain I'm above it. But let's check it out. Let's calculate. Total revenue YTD PY, right? And that will be, I'm guessing you could write it now. So it's calculate. This time I'm doing total revenue year to date. And I'm bringing that back 1 year, right? So date at, my dates are still in my calendar table, and I want to do -1 on year, right? So I'm going to add this here, right? And now I have something, right? Now I have something, but if you think about it, I'm already 6 measures deep. I haven't even touched the other 2 KPIs, which means time free, right? And I'm already 2 reports deep, and I haven't even touched the other 2 KPIs, which means times 2. And then again, right, on each one of these, I can only like see over here, I can see by business unit. Well, what if I want it by product? Well, I don't have that here. So I would need to either create a tooltip or a drill through, meaning more reports, right? And this is a basic Power BI approach, right? And this is sort of the approach that is also, you know, kind of comes from the fact that I have multiple fact tables, right? And this is what you call a snowflake schema, right? There are 2, let's call them database schemas or data model schemas. One would be star schema, which would mean a single fact table and all the others are around it as satellites or as dimension tables. And then, right, there's a snowflake schema, which would mean, well, basically you have multiple fact tables, and even your dimension tables can have multiple dimensions themselves, right? So it's a snowflake. That's kind of the idea. And from here on out, what we're going to do in the next, let's say, 10 minutes is we're going to build a snowflake schema. With all this data, we're not going to lose anything. We're just going to build a snowflake schema. And we're going to use Power Query extensively. Well, basically, we're going to do 3 things with Power Query. Simply to have this single fact table. And then you're going to see how we're going to achieve everything we've just done. But for all 3 KPIs, so times 3 in a single report, right? And yes, the measure will be slightly, you know, more, but simply due to the fact that we will have a single fact table. So let me show you how that looks. So let me close this down. And let me start with a brand new, fresh Power BI desktop file. And let me go to my recent sources, find the file. And again, I'm going to take all the data, right? We still need all the data. But whereas before I went to transform only to change a name of a single dimension table, now we're going to do a lot here. So in my Power Query now, I'm going to grab both of these. So these are my fact tables, right? Actual and plan. And I'm going to basically right click each one and I'm going to say you will not load this. So both of these will not get loaded. And I'm even going to take them to a new group. So I'm going to call this staging. And I'm going to move both of them there. Right, whereas this one will be my load. Let me just change the name of the products again so we don't forget that. Okay, and now let me create a new single table out of these two. And the way we do that is we say home. Right, so we go to the home tab and we say append queries. And append simply means put them one on top of the other. Now before I do this, I should check, but I'm certain it is like that. I should check that the names of the columns are all the same and the type of data is all the same, right? Basically, the names need to be the same or they'll never be put on top of one another. But it's a cool thing if the data types are also the same. So I know that I have that, so I can go home, append queries as new. Right? I want to leave the two queries as they are, so I can still manage them individually. But once they're done, I want to create a new query that is going to append the two. So take the actual and append the plan. If I had more, I could go 3 or more tables and I could just append more, but I only have the 2, so I'll just leave it here. I'll go OK. And I just got a new table. It's called append. I'll put it in my load. I'll call this sales. I probably should call it F sales, so fact sales, so we would know it's a fact table, but I won't because we know, right? This is my fact table. And now I should just check if I didn't get any extra columns, and I didn't. And I should also check if the types of data within my columns are still there. And they are, right? So this worked perfectly. But now I'll do another thing. And this one is probably one of the coolest things you're going to see. You're not going to get it instantly, but you will get it once you see it in action, right? What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to select all 3 KPIs, right? And usually I wouldn't do it like this. Usually I would select everything but the KPIs. So I would select all of my dimensions, right? Like this. And I wouldn't select the KPIs. And the reason is this. If I select the KPIs, now the command I'm looking for is right click, unpivot columns, right? And at this point, it doesn't matter if I had like 7 KPIs or 10 or 20. I'm just going to get 2 columns, right? So unpivot. And I'm going to get 2 columns out of this. One will be called attribute, and I'm going to change that immediately because it should actually be called KPI, right? Oh, there it is. So all I did is I changed the code of this step, right? I didn't rename it because it would add an extra step. And the other one is called value. Right? This is what I have. And keep in mind, there's another thing that's actually important here. In my actual and in my plan table, I have a column. It's called scenario, which enables me that when I get to my fact table, I still know where my data came from. So I know which of the 2 tables this row is coming from. That is important, right? If you want to calculate actual versus plan at any point. Okay. So this is all the transformations that we're going to do. So basically we did 2 things. We created a single fact table. And keep in mind, there's something here that needs to be said. So this is a perfect example, right? Where we have planned values down to the product, customer, salesperson, business unit, right? Usually you wouldn't have that, but it doesn't matter. You don't need all of the columns to place a table on top of one another, right? They will just be blank. It doesn't matter, right? So nothing would be lost if our plan wouldn't have the same columns as the actual has, right? Usually the granularity is not the same, right? Because you don't forecast or plan by each customer. Maybe the big ones, but not each. Okay, either way, that's one thing we did. So we put them one on top of the other. And then we also did the unpivot part. And remember, I said it doesn't matter how many KPIs we had. What we get are two columns, KPI value. And there's another thing I want to talk about here is when I did the unpivot, I selected these three. And I said that's not the best way. And the reason that's not the best way, if I look at the column I got, and if I look at the code that I got, I actually got a brilliant code which says, you know what? These are the columns that will not get unpivoted, and just unpivot the rest. Now, why do I call this brilliant? Well, because now if I get an extra KPI, it will get unpivoted because it's not hard-coded. You should unpivot revenue, cost, and gross profit. It says these are the ones that stay put, unpivot the rest, right? So that is also kind of brilliant what we did here. Okay, so now we have everything prepared. So these two will not load, these will load, and I'm just gonna go close and apply. Right, so now these will get loaded. And this time you're gonna see that my data model will look slightly different. Right, and the reason it will look different is because we have a single fact table. Right? This now kind of looks like a star schema. We just are missing one little table, and we know which one it is. It's a calendar, right? And we can just create that. So I hope I still have it in my, so let me do modeling, new table. Let's see if that's still in there. Yes, it is. Cool. So now I got my calendar table. I connect that to my sales. And I got my perfect star schema, right? And from here on out, I'll just change one thing. Or actually not change. I needed to do it in the first example also. So the month, that one should be sorted by month number. And the weekday, I'm not even sure why I'm doing this because we don't need it anywhere, but okay, weekday number, right? And now let's start. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of create the same. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say, here's my year, right? And that needs to be a slicer, and let me select one. And now here, I would want my monthly report. Well, I can start by give me a chart, right? And give me my months in there. But now what, right? Well, now I need to calculate my actual. And that will just be slightly different this time. But I'm also going to do one more thing. Because remember before when we said, oh, and if I do it monthly, I'll usually want to see it year to date, at least to see where I am up to this point. But sometimes I'll look at it monthly. So we already had two different measures. Well, now I'll do this. I'll actually create a new table, which will only have two columns. It will be ID and calc. IDs will be 1 and 2. Calc will be month to date, and year to date. And I'll call this calc. And I'm just going to load this into my model. Now keep in mind, this one, I actually don't want connected to anything. So this one should just be free without any connections. And the reason being, because I want to use something that we call a disconnected slicer or a disconnected table, which is a brilliant thing in modeling, because you can do this. So if I now bring in calc, right, and I sort of set that as a slicer, and let me do this one as buttons. There it is, right? So now I have my month to date, my year to date. Now I can go and write a measure. I'll put it in sales. I'll say new measure. And this one's going to be slightly longer, right? I'll just call this actual. And this will be calculate. And then the core of this will be a switch function. And a switch function is going to calculate the minimum of my calc ID. What is the minimum of my calc ID? Well, it depends on what I select here. If I select month to date, the minimum is 1. If I select year to date, the minimum is 2. And that's what I'm going to use here. I'm going to say that's your calculation. And now if that one gives you 1, then you should just do a sum of sales value, right? That is my column with values now. But if that is 2, then you should do calculate sum of sales value, but this time dates YTD, right? And my date is in my calendar table like this, like this. And now I need one more thing. So I just wrapped up my switch statement, but I still need this to calculate, right? Because now I have in my fact table, I actually have 2 scenarios. It's the actual and it's the plan. And this one should only be the actual, right? It's AC. So the sales scenario equals actual, right? That's the data I want in this, right? This is my measure. And now let's see what we've got. Right? If I add actual to my table, here's what I got. Right? Now, what is this? Well, that's debatable because it's actually 3 things. Right? I need another filter up here, and a very important one, and that is KPI. Right? But by simply adding that filter, this can now be revenue. This can now be cost. This can now be gross profit. And because I added this one, I can get each one of these as year to date or month to date. Right? So I just covered 6 reports in this one. This does it all, right? Now let's do the plan. And if you think about it, how will plan differ from the actual? Well, it will be exactly the same, but this will say PL and this will say PL. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to do new measure. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to call this plan, and I'm going to call this plan, right? You still calculate the exact same thing, but this time I want you to kind of be mindful of only the rows where scenario equals PL, so the plan, right? There it goes. And now I can add that over here. And I already have comparison actual to plan for all 3 KPIs. And again, keep in mind, how did we get the KPIs? Well, we got them by the unpivot step. And remember what I said? It wouldn't matter if we had 20 KPIs or 3, right? So this would work the same. We just have it now for all KPIs. Now, keep in mind, not all KPIs are additive, right? Not all of them can be a sum, right? Some would need to be average. Some would even need to be some more complex calculation. Now, for those, we would do a different kind of thing. But for this straight up thing, this works, right? And it works brilliantly. There it is, right? Any KPI for any year, month to date versus year to date, right? Brilliant. But it gets better. Now let me do the previous year, right? So sales, new measure, and the simplicity of this one is gonna just blow your mind, because it's gonna be PY, right? Previous year equals, and then it's gonna be a calculate my actual, and because actual has the year-to-date switch built in, I don't need to calculate previous year year-to-date, because the actual does that. I just need to say, and you know what, whatever the actual does, just bring it back 1 year. So date add calendar date -1 on year, right? So if I do this, I can now add it, and now I have previous year, month to date, year to date, any little KPI, right? Brilliant. And I'm guessing the best way to check if it works, I would check 2016 as the year, and now previous year has disappeared. Why? Well, because there's no previous year of data, right? So that means it works, right? There it is. Okay. So I forgot to mention in the beginning, this is a recording, but I am present somewhere, right? So if you have any questions on this, just write your questions in the comments or in the chat, and I'll reply to that, right? Okay, so now we have this, which is kind of brilliant. We just wrote 3 measures, and we can do everything that our previous report could do, right? Well, but it's not perfect, and it's not perfect in the sense that, okay, yeah, I have the calculations themselves, but now it seems I would need to do something, and I would need to do the same thing previously. I would need to subtract the two, right? I would want to know what the difference is to the plan, and I would also want to know what that is in percentage points. So regardless of everything we've done, it seems like we still need at least 2 more measures, right? Or do we? Well, we don't, because what I'm going to use is a perfect visual for this, right? There it is. And now we have everything done. So any calculation, year to date, month to date, with, and this is the perfect part, right? So it switched the plan and previous year. Let me just switch those up. There you go. So here, what I have here, right, is this is my actual, this is my plan, this is my previous year, but then I also have the difference to previous year in percentage points and the actual number, and the difference to plan in percentage points and the actual number, right? And that is just brilliant, right? Okay, so in this case, I use the Zebra BI charts visual, which is, at least for financial reports, it's the best thing you can do. Okay, well, but okay, now we have it monthly, which is, which is cool, right? But I still need to have by business unit. I would need it to have it by product, by customer, by salesperson, right? Even though we have everything done with 3 measures, which is great, right? it still seems like we need 10 additional reports. Well, we could do them, or we could do this. We could say, you know what? I want a new parameter, and this one would be a field parameter. And I want a field, and I'm going to call it T1000 for obvious reasons, right? It's the terminator that could be anything. And then for the fields that I can switch, I'm going to say, well, you could be business unit, or you could be country ID, or you could be customer, or you could be product group, you could be product category, or you could even be product, right? Or you could be my salesperson. I'm going to say create, and what I'm going to get is, right now you're just going to see one slicer, right? The slicer will be called T1000, and I can pick any one of these, right? And now let me make this just a bit smaller. Let me try and switch this slicer to buttons and have it like this. Yeah, there's too many of them. There's no way I can fit them all. There you go. Okay. And now I'll select one. It doesn't matter. Now I'll create another visual, right? I'll do a bar chart. I'll put in my T1000, right? There it is. And then I'll say, you know what? You should calculate actual, plan, previous year, right? So all of a sudden down here, I have those for each and every dimension, by each and every dimension. But it gets better because this one I could also change into a Zebra BI. So it gives me way more information as it stands, right? And if I make this slightly bigger, you're going to see what I mean, right? There it is, right? So it's giving me actual previous year plan versus, so difference to previous year, difference to plan, which again, it switched over. So let me correct that. There it is. Right, if I now make this one even smaller, so this one can live, right? Well, that's just the most beautiful thing we've ever seen, right? And here's the kicker. Oh, Germany. We went way off on gross profit. Well, how did that happen? Oh, it happened in the first couple of months, and then, you know, down to September, we were actually good in the last few months. Brilliant, right? What about revenue? How does Germany look on that? Oh, okay. Slightly better. Is it the cost that got so much bigger? No. Well, yeah, but not as much, right? So I'm hoping that you can see how by utilizing Power BI, right? By utilizing a model schema that is overwhelmingly, you know, sung up as the best model schema ever, right? And that is the star schema. How we were able to achieve basically a single pager report, which you couldn't now say it doesn't do anything, right? What if I wanted to see sales by which product was the best by gross profit in 2017 up to September? Well, first off, I select product here, right? These are my products. I go to gross profit, right? So for 2018, I now know this one was the best. Now I'll go 2017, right? So this product seems to have done the best, but now I'll go year to date, and over here I'll select September. But that's not just September now. That is up to September because we have year to date, right? So this is now the product that sold best up to September, or actually that brought in the most gross profit up to September for year 2017. And, that is just a brilliant piece of information. And now if I wanted to know, okay, so how much did our second best product bring in up to September? Well, I just switched the filter. Now I filter by the second best product. And up to September, that was 152.3K. Right? And now I could go, right? I could go in depth here. I could even do, crazy stuff like I could do a tooltip on, let's say, countries. And I would say this is a tooltip. It shouldn't be that small. It should be different. Let's do 420 by 600. Let's do it like this. And basically I'm going to add country to this, right? And the size of it should be my actual. Oh, it's only AC, sorry. There it is. Right? And now I'm going to say wherever actual is used, this can be viewed. I'm going to hide this, so I still, in effect, I still only have one, right? But I only have one report, right? It's a single pager. But here's what I got. Now I can go to this one and I can say, you know what? I actually want to use tooltips with this. And I want you to give me TT countries, right? And if I now go monthly revenue, show me this. There it is. It's a report within a report, but I'm still only on a single report. And if I now say, but I want a business unit, I'm actually only interested in baby care. So now this is filtered. And if I now go to this one, now that is also filtered. Right? But I could say, show me this year to date. And I'm interested in May or June, sorry. There it is. Right? So I could have fun with tooltips here. And I could do tooltips on this one also. So, this could even be way more, but I don't want to get into that too much, because what I really wanted to kind of relay here is the perfect report, right? A kind of a report that does it all, at least the basic stuff, right? It's kind of based upon a perfect data model. Right? And here's where the biggest kind of, or the best things that happened here. Because I have a single table. I'm only writing one measure, right? Another thing that was great here, and that's the thing that we did kind of in the background. So remember this KPI slicer, where did we get that? Well, we sort of got it when we did this. When we were creating our sales table and we said, you know what? Pick all the KPIs and unpivot them. So it didn't matter how many columns we had before. Now we have 2. KPI value. Keep in mind, for each row, you're now going to get 3 rows. Right? And that is also, so now we're getting into the debate of, why doesn't everyone do this? Well, it's never just 3 KPIs, is it? Right? Usually the number of KPIs would be way bigger than 3. And usually the fact table which over here, I think it has like 130,000 rows. Maybe it has 300,000. I don't know. But still, right, in a sense of a fact table for the financial report, or for sales report for a company, that's nothing, right? That amount of rows is nothing. Usually you would be talking millions, but now think about it. If you got 1,000,000 rows and you grab your, let's say you have 10 KPIs, which is still a small number, but let's say you have 10. And now you do the unpivot. So each row becomes 10 rows, right? Your couple of millions now just became tens of millions. And all of a sudden, this is a problem. And it's a problem because everything that we do here, so everything that we do in our Power Query step, this will all be repeated every time the data set refreshes. And a step that creates 20 million rows out of, a couple of million, that one is going to take a while, right? So you just prolonged your refresh, and that is a problem, right? That could be a problem. That could be a big problem. Again, what you get is brilliant, but it doesn't always work. We also discussed, okay, yeah, I can do the unpivot so perfectly, right? Because they're all aggregate measures. They're all just sum of that. What if I had percentages in here? What if I had like the amount of discount? Well, you can't just sum up those, right? So what if I had measures that would not be the aggregate measures? Well, what I would need to do is I would need to actually create first two tables, which again, I would not load. One would be all of my aggregate measures, and the other one would be all of my non-aggregate measures. I would unpivot the first, I would unpivot the second. You only get two columns, so that's the same now. And then I just need to give it an attribute. I just need to give it an extra column to each one of these tables that says, is it aggregate or is it not, right? Just a flag, 1 or 0. And then I would still append the two. So I would get to my final goal of having a single fact table. So still, I'm working within my star schema idea, right? But then my measures would get way more complicated because they would be, okay, and now if that flag is 1, then do a sum. But if that flag is 0, then you're doing a totally different calculation, right? So that could also, let's say, spell trouble, right? And it would be something that you need to kind of get sorted. But, this is a concept. And as a concept, you can see the benefit you get from it, right? It's not something you should ignore. It's something you should always strive towards. But having in your head, I'm not always going to achieve it. It's not always achievable, right? But I should always strive towards it because it's so brilliant. That's the idea. Okay, and then one more thing that we did, and again, this is all, everything we did is just concept to get towards a single page of report. So another thing we created a disconnected slicer over here, right? So we created a disconnected slicer, which was basically just enter data. So bring in a new table, and the table was as simple as it gets. It was this, right? You can't even see it. Oh, sorry for that. Let me bring this back. Right, so it was 2 columns, an ID column, a cal column. You do need the ID column. Well, you could do without it, but the ID column actually gives you something brilliant, right? Because over here, I know what will happen if I have month to date. I know what will happen if I have year to date. What's going to happen if I select both? Right? And maybe you just have to think about it, right? And you can see here, well, what happened is it calculated month to date. Well, why is that? Well, because in our actual, we set it to do that. We said you should calculate the minimum of the ID, right? So let me do this. So if I'm now on a month to date, what is the minimum of the ID? Well, it's 1, right? Because it has a single row. If I filter to year to date, well, the minimum is 2 because it's just a single row. But if I select both, well, now I have both rows, but the minimum is still 1. But I could play around with this. I could say, oh, what if I did this? Instead of minimum, if I had maximum, how would that change the behavior? Right? And you can probably guess what would happen. Well, what would happen is now month to date is still month to date, right? Year to date is still year to date. But if I select both, well, now it's searching for the maximum, and that is 2. So that's why I get year to date now, right? Now, the reason this is going all over the place is because we're only fixing the actual, we're not fixing the plan, and the plan still has the minimum. That's why the differences were so big now. But let me show you another one, and this one should kind of, make your eyes sparkle. What if I, instead of this, had a sum here? Oh, well, now I don't only have 1 and 2, right? Because if I select both, it's going to calculate the sum of ID column, and that one's actually going to give me 3. So out of thin air, from a table that only has 2 values, I just created a third option. All right, so if I go comma here, and I think I missed one over here, so I should finish the calculate, and then I don't need this one. And then I said, well, it could also be 3, and if that is the case, you should return, well, you should just return blank, right? Now you could also, well, let me go with blank, just so you'll see what happens, right? So let me do this. If I select year to date, it works. If I select month to date, it works. If I select both, my actual just disappeared. Now, of course, I would also need to do the same thing for the plan, but you get the idea, right? By doing a sum here, I just created a third option. I could also go select a single calc, right? So I could also use that to create a warning, right? Select a single calc. That's what you should do. There it is. And if you do, it works. If you select both, no, right? So the disconnected slicers, oh, that's so brilliant, and it just gives you this whole plethora of ideas. And one of the best ideas I ever saw was that you could actually create your table if you had multiple options here, right? Let's say you had like a P&L thing. The numbers you would give it would be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on and so forth. And then the thing you would do at the beginning would be a sum. And I don't know if you already did the quantum mechanic calculation in your head, but what you get is you can actually catch each and every combination because it never overlaps. 1, 2, and then it's a 4. So there is a space for that 3 where these two are selected. And then the next one is 8. So I have space for 5, 6, 7. So if this one and 1 is selected, if this one and 2 is selected, or if all of them are selected, right? And then I have the 8, and then I have space down to 16. So from 4 rows, I actually have, well, you can calculate the number of combinations, but you see how this is brilliant, right? So we did this with disconnected slicer, and that is one of the best things to do in modeling, right? The disconnected tables, to use them wisely, they give you such incredible, they're just so dynamic. You can do so many things with it. And then, right, we did another thing, which was over here, where we basically used a feature called parameter, but a field parameter. So we created like this new table that only has a single value, and that is whatever is selected here, right? That is the value. But we're actually switching fields. That value, that field can now be product, or it could be salesperson, or it could be business unit, right? We now have the ability through this to filter through different dimensions. So in a single table, I can now have this, right? And it kind of gets even better because we could do this differently. And let me show you how. And I'm thinking you should be amazed by this. Remember when we did this one, right? Let me delete this and let me instead put in a simple Zebra BI table where I'll have T1000 and then I'll have actual. Oh, so obviously I had something big selected, so it's gonna take a while now. Okay. It says it's doing something. I'm not seeing it. But okay. So let me go back. Well, now I can't go back. I'll have to wait for it. Okay, let me select something simple. Oh, business units. That is simple. So what's happening here? Okay, this one just went all over the place. So I'm just gonna, wave my arms around. Imagine that you would have this table actually on a different, so this table, right? You would just say, let's do this. Let's cut. Oh, and now, yeah, let's paste, but now it's just gonna. So imagine if we had that table as a tooltip. And I could actually, with my slicer, I could manage what my tooltip is gonna be. And once I would get over here, right? Oh, it actually works if I don't look at it. So if I go country ID and I go over here, there it is. Customer, there it is, right? So now in here, I could do something way better. I could say, you know what, over here, I actually want you to give me business units in a different fashion. I want you to give me division. I want you to give me group. Oh, why did it do that? So division, group, and then business unit. And I just got something amazing here, right? I got electronics. Oh, we were way down on the plan. How did that happen? Oh, it happened because of mobile. Well, how did that happen? Oh, it was tablets and smartphones, both equally at fault. Right? Brilliant. Right? But then I could say, you know what? I wonder which countries did this, right? And if I took this and I said, well, wouldn't it be nice if this one had a tooltip, right? and I said, go to country, and now show me where this happened. There it is, right? Now that is just brilliant, right? So the field parameters, yeah, you can use them just exactly as we did, straightforward, or you can even use them to kind of affect which tooltip you're going to see, right? Which is just such a brilliant way of thinking, right? Okay, I'm going to stop right here, right? So this was a session that hopefully showed you what a perfect report could look like. Now, again, I didn't go into visuals that much because I just use Zebra BI because it's already IBCS, International Standards of Business Communication. It's already there. So I don't need to do anything. All the colors are exactly as they should be. All the colors are the same all over the place. So, right. But yeah, I could make this way better with a title, with the, it could be way nicer. But I'm hoping that you get the idea from this because it's the idea that matters. Once you see this, you're going to want to, swim towards it every time, right? And it really pays off because this is a report that can do way more than the first one was able to do with free measures, right? Which should be mind-blowing. Okay. So let me do 2 more slides. So that was the demo, right? We're now going to go into the Q&A, but before we do, let me just say thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope this was a helpful session for you. I hope you got the keywords out of it, right? The star schema, the disconnected tables, all of those, the unpivot from Power Query, all the keywords, right? I hope that they resonated. If you want to get in touch with me, here's my email. I would actually most prefer it if you contacted me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. So you can find me there and connect. So contact me with any questions you have, right? And we can discuss this further. And now let's really go to the Q&A, right? So I am hovering around here somewhere, waiting for your questions, right? So have at it. And thank you again. Thank you for listening. I hope this was a great conference for you guys. I hope you learned a lot. And hopefully we see each other again. Thank you.
Thank you, Gasper. I was expecting when online Gasper will start conversation with our video Gasper.
Almost did it once.
Great. So to sum up, my opinion that beautiful visualization depends on beautiful data model. And really, we had a lot of cases when we design a mock-up or beautiful dashboards on demo data, but when we finally connect it to the dirty data, to the wrong data model, everything crashed, or all the charts were unproportional, 20 categories instead 5 categories as our client promised. And really, if we have beautiful data model, I'm sure that we will get beautiful dashboard.
True enough. True enough.
Oh, I see that you answer
Yeah, I already answered everything. So maybe I'll just go to the last one. So Vladimir asked about the how would people react to a single page report, right? Because it's a shocker if you think about it. People are used to, having like a fairy tale of 7 pages to read the report. And honestly, there are cases to be made where this is not good. Like if you use the Q&A feature of Power BI, right? When you say, show me, and basically what we just did is if you would say, show me actual by product, the numbers don't mean anything until you say where KPI is cost, right? Which usually you wouldn't have to do. Usually you would just say, show me actual by something, and that actual means something. Whereas here, because of the unpivot, the actual itself is just a sum of all the values. So it's a sum of revenue, gross profit, cost, and of course the entire P&L or cash flow or whatever, right? So this would take a lot of training, a lot of everything, but it's just, remember, as I said, this is a proof of concept, and it's also a mindset of, something that you should always kind of have in your head as, okay, now we have way too many reports. What can I do? Oh, maybe I'll have a disconnected slicer and I'll bring that down. Ideas like that, right? Because there was a lot of ideas in here on how to make that better.
Yes, this idea takes time to change the mindset for many users who get used to see the list of their measures, but not a single universal measure.
True. But it's just, the hardest thing that can happen to you is not really knowing what's out there. Just knowing that something exists, even if you are not able to do it, is better, because then oh, I know this can be done, so let me try and figure it out, right? Otherwise, you're just wandering in the dark and saying, this can be done, and just going your way. Whereas, it's better to at least have, oh, I've seen this somewhere, right? And now I can go and search online and do whatever. Yeah, thank you for that, Vladimir.
Thank you. It was
my pleasure. I was the closing session.
Yes, you're our headliner, and I think it's a nice feature to make such a pre-recorded workshop. And
lots of conferences do it because, like, just this week we had the Global Excel Summit, which is like the biggest conference for Excel people and Power BI people. Not the biggest one for Power BI people, but anyways, it was all online, and lots of people opted to have a video. And I've seen about 3 sessions where people fell off, or it was a bad connection, right? Because people were skiing, and the voice didn't come through, and then it just all falls apart. So from that perspective, this is a good thing to have as a backup, right? Usually some conferences will ask for a video just to have a backup in case things go wrong.
Yeah, so let's run our rating poll for your workshop. Thank you again, and we come to the final point of our event. For me, for my team, it was a great experience. Thank you for being with us all these days, for your support. Thank you, Gasper, and all our speakers, all our juries. And I hope that once we will organize in-person conference, as I promised before, because even in this online format, I feel your energy, I feel your support, and I believe that it would be wonderful to meet in person. So thank you for my team, to Kate, to Annette, to Natalie, to Jane, for doing this, all this, for preparing all this for previous almost half a year. So thank you for all, and let's launch our final greeting video, which we prepared recently